CK, welcome to KPC. And today we are starting a new initiative. It's about putting our conversations online. Me and you regularly meet for brainstorming various secretarial matters. And today, when we are brainstorming on demat of securities, I thought it's best that let's try this to put our discussion online. It would be a casual talk where we would discuss the applicability of the amendment, which is compulsory demat of securities by private companies. We'll then dive deeper into what are the complex situations that govern this kind of an amendment, what securities are covered, what's the process, what's the entire thing about dematerialization. We'll dive deep into it. And then we'll have, I have received a lot of questions from promoters as to what happens at certain situations. So I'll put those questions in front of you for, the larger audience that we would get through this video that we are hoping.
Okay.
And I think before we dive deeper into it, let's introduce ourselves. And I thank you for coming here today. So let's go with you first.
Uh, First of all, thank you, Dipam Bhai, for inviting me for this brainstorming session. I'm Chirag Kular, practicing company secretary from Ahmedabad, and we are majorly focusing on three areas of law, that is company law, SEBI, and FEMA.
Great. So I'll also briefly introduce myself. I am Deepam. I am a partner with Kandilal Patel and Company, firm of chartered accountants, and I focus largely into international tax valuation transactions and PEM. So with that, I think let's dive into the subject. Today, what I want to kind of discuss with you is that the amendment that has come in, the dematerialization of securities and its applicability for private companies, and that largely we know that by September 24, we need to get all the securities dematerialized. So just give a background on the amendment, its applicability, which all companies are covered, which are exempted, or which still do not want to, kind of they can stop watching the video when they know that we are not covered by this. So I think you can just give a brief about that.
Okay. Basically, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, in the month of October 2023, by way of notification, introduced this particular amendment for dematerialization of securities for private companies. It was compulsory for listed as well as the public limited companies. But now, with this amendment, its applicability came to private companies also. But there are certain exemptions also given to the private limited companies. Say for example, small companies are exempted, okay, from this particular notification. Government companies are also exempted from this particular notifications. Now there would be a question that what are the small companies? So one by one, whatever the questions you have, we will discuss in depth all that particular.
Sure. So I think let's start with what are small companies? What's the threshold? How does a small company, how do I know that I'm a small company?
Okay. Small companies, first, the threshold limit is 4 crore of paid up share capital. Your paid up share capital, if it's within 4 crore, or turnover of preceding financial year is less than 40 crores.
Okay.
40 crores or less than 40 crores. Then you would be within the limit of small companies. And these are both the compulsory requirements and is there between both the
Okay. So
threshold limits.
either of them is breached, you no longer remain a small.
Small company, right?
Okay. And I think, is there any condition about subsidiary holding? Like, for example, if I'm a subsidiary of a private company and so still I continue to remain a small company, or is there any specific?
Okay. In continuation with the small company definition, if any company is having any holding or subsidiary company, or if there is any section 8 company, okay, so they are not categorized as small companies.
Okay, so even if all the companies in a group are less than 40 crores, less than 4 crore capital, turnover and capital.
Right.
But if they have a subsidiary under or above,
Yes.
kind of, if they have a holdco, subco kind of an arrangement, then they would stop to be small companies and they would still be covered irrespective of this financial threshold.
Financial. Right.
Okay. So again, just discussing a bit more about the background. Why would this amendment come into being? Means I have my views. I like to take yours first.
Okay. We all know since the Modi has came to power, the main thing is he wants transparency. If we see all the government benefit schemes, specifically they have introduced the concept of DBT, direct benefit transfer. Okay, so all the persons would be getting the benefit in their direct bank account. So this is one of the transparency system. So now that particular transparency system has been introduced here also. Government wants to know who has purchased your shares, who has sold your shares, specifically in private companies.
Hmm.
Okay, for that particular reason, this particular concept of dematerialization of shares has came in the private companies, because in private companies, except in the ITR returns, okay, where you need to mention all the details of what all companies you are holding the shares. None of the other compliances or any of the forms you don't mention your PAN.
Correct.
Okay, so this leads to the second thing of Benami transactions. Okay, there are n number of Benami transactions going on. So in order to stop that particular Benami transaction, government introduced the Benami Act, and now with respect to that, these amendments has came for this dematerialization of securities.
Right. So I think the word benefit is something that has kind of been around for a lot of amendments that have come across the word benefit through beneficial ownership and stuff. So I think my view here is kind of, adding to what you have mentioned, is a systemic approach to beneficial ownership capturing. I think all of it is complementing to what the word benefit is. And I think, yeah, largely it's to capture the benefit arising out of all the transactions and the securities that go around the transactions. So, okay, now let's dive into the subject. Some private companies have issued preference shares, startups very commonly issue CCPS.
Hmm.
So, what all is covered in securities? Is it just equity shares or all the shares that are issued by the company or all other securities? Like, for example, if a private company has issued debt in the form of debentures, so what all is covered into securities and would all of that be required to be dematerialized?
Okay, yeah, see, we have receiving many calls from our clients that only equity shares needs to be dematerialized, not any other securities. But if you read the notification as well as in that it specifically mentioned all the securities needs to be dematerialized. Okay, now what is the meaning of securities? In Companies Act, it has been said that securities means as the definition given in Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956, Section 2H. Okay, so now we need to deep dive into that particular definition of SCARE Act 1956. In that definition of securities, all the things are covered like equity shares, preference shares, debentures, either it may be convertible, not convertible, uh, any of the government bonds are there. Okay, so whatever the securities, okay, or whatever the instruments with the particular company has issued, all that needs to be converted into dematerialized.
So I think I don't know whether you have or so my family, right? My grandfather used to own shares in that physical paper form.
Hmm.
And I think today private companies used to issue that, but public company shares, like they are mementos. And that's what something they are valueless, but they have that moment value. So, what exactly is dematerialized securities? There's a very common saying, you should not, or possibly, those who kind of advocate against investing in equity, you're buying paper. That's kind of the advocacy that goes into convincing people not to buy equity. If at all there's a person who wants, kind of like only fixed return investment is better. They kind of use this analogy that you are actually putting your money into paper, so paper was synonymous to a physical share. So now what is dematerialized security?
Uh, See, before these particular amendments, all the private companies were issuing the physical share certificates. Yeah. That's the paper or the momentum as you tell. Now, what is dematerialization? As you when if any person is investing in the listed companies, so there you don't get any of the physical share certificate. All the shares are if you have purchased any shares, it would be shown in your demat account only. Okay. Now, uh, exactly, do you want to know the whole process how they dematerialize from physical
So I think, yeah,
certificate?
that's also something that people would like to know. So I think we can take that also right now. Yeah, I can go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, we understand some of the intermediaries which are involved in this particular whole dematerialization process. So one is depository. Okay. In India, there are only two depositories. One is NSDF and second one is CDSL. The National Securities Depository Limited and Securities Depository Limited. So these are both the depositories which maintain your ownership of equity share or any of the instruments.
Hmm.
It's like a bank only.
So they are like registries.
Yeah, right. Registries. In bank, you bank maintains your money. Okay, here they maintain your securities.
Hmm.
Then the second one is depository participants. Normally, the depository participants are your brokers. Okay, they act as an agent of depository. If any of the investor wants to dematerialize the securities, so they would request by way of a broker to depository to convert their shares into demat.
Hmm.
And the third one is registrar and share transfer agent. Okay, they maintain all the records of the companies. So these are the three main parties that are involved in this particular dematerialization process.
Okay. So basically, would it be okay to say that dematerialized security is an electronic record of your ownership?
Right,
So it's
100%.
it's kind of a digital share certificate,
Digital share certificate, right?
and it's certified by the depository that this particular party holds this security.
Yes.
Okay, so just taking that forward, what is an ISIN?
ISIN is International Securities Identification Number. It's full form. It's given to specific class of securities. For example, you are having class A equity shares, class B equity shares.
Hmm.
So for class A equity shares, this is the ISIN. It's of 12 digit. So it's an unique identification number, like our Aadhaar card. That's our unique number. So it's the unique number of this particular class of equity shares. Now, if you have issued another class, so once again you need to generate another ISIN number for this particular class of securities.
Okay. So let's take it step by step. I own a private company.
Hmm.
I have shares, and I am not the small company as is exempted from the applicability of this provision.
Okay.
So now I have to go to get my shares, and I am a very simple private company. I only have one class of shares. It's an equity share,
Okay.
and I only have 3 or 4 shareholders. They're all family members. Now I want to get my shares dematerialized. So what's the process? Where should I go? And how do I go about it to get the shares dematerialized?
Okay. First thing you should go to company secretary.
Yeah. So what would
Okay.
the company secretary then do, for my understanding?
Okay. So normally the first step is company secretary first of all will guide you, or it would be any other professional.
Hmm.
As you are doing video with me, so I am telling that.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the first step is you need to approach first you need to select any one of the depository. Okay, either it would be an NSDL or CDS. You can select both also, but for a private company, it would be unnecessary
Yeah.
increase in cost.
Okay.
Okay. Then once you have selected depository, there would be a checklist of documents which you need to submit with the depositories. Okay. Once all the documents are submitted with the depositories, okay, then ISIN number will be generated.
Okay.
Okay, then you need to select your registrar and share transfer agent. Okay. Once registrar and share transfer agent has been selected, which will help you in maintaining the records, okay, in electronic form, and then with with the registrar and share transfer agent, you need to submit all your original documents like physical share certificate plus you need plus that is request slip to your depository participant, that is broker.
Okay.
Then broker, on the basis of whatever the records which you have submitted, will convert your physical shares into the dematerialized shares.
Okay. So, when you just spoke about submitting all the original documents, one question that we had with a client was that the original share certificates are lost. Like the company was made somewhere 40, 50 years back, and then there's been transmission, and in some cases, still the original shares are there, but they don't have the share certificates. There may be certain transfers in between. 20 years back, share certificates are lost. Plus, there might be a bonus that had been issued and all those things where the capital is not there. The physical share certificates by the shareholders are not really present with them. So, what's the process there?
Yeah. See, in private company, basically, if you have the physical share certificate, then it means you are the ownership of that particular shares.
Hmm.
And the second thing, all every year, the number of shares which a particular person is holding, all the records are filed with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So now, if you are not holding that, but not having that share certificate, then you can request to the company for issuance of duplicate share certificate.
Okay. And the company would issue it, and then the shareholder would have to tender it. So, who would tender it to the company? For example, a company is, say, a private company, and there's a family feud going on, right? So they are not at good terms to kind of. So, who will surrender their share certificates for any purpose? So, is it the shareholders directly submitting and tendering it to the depository or the participant, or it is through the management of the company that the shares go into it? Plus, let's take an example where there are 100 shareholders. So, is the company expected to procure all those share certificates and provide to the uh, agency? Or does individual shareholders go to the agency and get their shares dematerialized?
In normally private companies, company only does all the work, but in actual case, it's like that. Particular shareholder, for example, if I am holding 100 shares of X private limited company, then I will submit my request to the registrar and share transfer agent with the company had appointed.
Hmm.
Along with all the documents.
So,
Then the register and share transfer agent will forward this application to my broker. Okay, but this particular request has been received. Now you can dematerialize the shares of this particular person.
okay, okay, good. So, if I were to, sorry, if I were to take an example where there are class A and class B shares, you briefly discussed that there would be separate ISIN, right? Now, for example, if I give a corporate action kind of a bonus, and so does my ISIN remain the same, or does the ISIN then undergo a change? Not in the case of a bonus, but I'm talking about a split. For example, my face value was 10. Now I have split the shares into from 10 to 1. So now my new shares are 1 rupee face value.
Hmm.
And if I do a stock split, does my ISIN change or does my ISIN remain the same?
Your ISIN would be changed.
It would change.
Yeah,
So
it would.
essentially, my original ISIN would be the 10 rupee face value, and
Yeah.
now they'll allot a new ISIN. The old ISIN would then kind of be dead
Yeah,
because there's
dead.
no shares outstanding against that.
Right.
Okay. So, what is the typical cost structure of getting this all done?
Uh, Typical cost structure. Wait. Uh, See, there are fees of different intermediaries. First, there would be a fees for the depositories, one of admission fee, okay, and then annual maintenance fees.
Okay.
Then there would be fees for the registrar and share transfer agent. The same process, admission fee as well as the annual maintenance fees are there.
Okay. So, what is this in the range of? Like,
Okay, this in the range of like say for depository the admission fee would be approx 15,000 rupees.
mhm.
Yeah, for NHDS or CDS.
So that's 1 5. Yeah, not 50.
Yeah, 1 5. Okay. Then there would be an annual custody fee,
Mhm.
and it depends upon your paid up share capital. Say if your paid up share capital is up to 2.5 CR, then there would be a 5,000 rupees your annual custody fees.
Okay. So if I were to, and also what I had learned from one of my clients who had got this proposal was that they had also got a, a per corporate action price.
Right.
So what are the corporate actions that are covered within? So how and when would an interaction with a depository participant or the RTA or the member would happen for a normal private company, like a very standard private company, family owned. They don't have any outside shareholders. They don't do bonuses. They don't do buybacks. They just simply do a dividend every year. And so, what all would be covered as a corporate action?
Corporate actions basically means whenever the company issues any shares, say by way of a rights issue.
Okay.
In private companies, if it's a family managed also, if they want more introduction of more capital, so they will do the rights issue.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's rights issue is termed as a corporate actions.
Okay.
And that corporate actions, according to the corporate actions, the this particular RTF is would be decided.
Okay. So, um, it would now increase to the cost of doing business for private companies.
Yeah, I think this is unnecessary and increase in cost to the private companies.
Yeah. So we'll discuss on the closing remarks on certain things. We'll park it till then. So
And there is one more
yeah.
security deposit fees also,
Okay.
which has to be paid to the CDSL or NSDL, whichever the depository which you have kept. And one more this dematerialization. If you want for every dematerialization, for example, I am the shareholder, I need to demat my shares. So I need to submit my application to the registrar and share transfer agent. So for every such application, they will charge some of the fees. So this is in relation to the cost structure which you were asking.
Correct. So now, once my shares are dematerialized, right? I receive a consolidated account summary, a CAS,
Yes,
from each of these depositories, which is NSDL sends a CAS to me. Now, would my private company shares also come into that CAS?
yes.
It would.
Yes.
So the worry that again, a query that had come to me was that how generally, promoters try and execute trades is they have an admin team. And definitely, I think when you have to transfer the shares, you need to kind of give a delivery instruction, and that delivery instruction becomes online, and they need to insert the OTP. Now, today, the promoters generally do a transfer of a listed share, right? HDFC or whatever, Reliance. And they kind of instruct the team that, transfer so many shares and give it to the broker. And that's what the delivery instruction would be. And then they would kind of give the OTP to the person because they don't generally do the entire process. So one of the promoters highlighted a risk that, once these shares are there, I don't really bother for the other shares because they can immediately be bought back if there's a mistake.
Right.
So what happens to private company shares? Because one is that private company shares are not freely transferable, right?
Right.
So also there may be certain restrictions in the articles. For example, if it's a joint venture company, there are transfer provisions, like you have a lock-in, you have a compulsory ROFO or a ROFR. So kind of if all of these provisions are there in the articles of the company, how does it translate into demat securities? And the second thing is that is there a provision where lock-in can be enforced? For example, if a shareholders agreement between two parties, they say that the lock-in is for 7 years. How would that lock-in be captured into the demat securities? And the third thing is that, for example, a family promoter, right? If they want to just lock that I don't want to get these shares transferred at all because they're never my intention to transfer. So even by mistake, they should not be transferred. Like even their articles don't restrict, but it's a family company, husband, wife. They don't ever want to transfer the shares. So what are the so in these three situations, how and what is the support that you could get from the system, the entire demat process?
Okay. See, specifically, whenever there is any case of joint venture companies or any lock-ins which has been specifically mentioned in your articles of association or the shareholders agreement. Okay, at that time you need to submit all these things with the your register and share transfer agent.
Hmm.
Okay. Then register and share transfer agent will, along with the depository participants, will lock in your shares. So even if any share transfer request has been there, your shares would not be transferred to any other persons. The locking, or you can say freeze.
Hmm.
That particular number of shares would be freezed in your Demat account unless and until whatever the unfreeze conditions are there. Once that unfreeze conditions are met, then and then only your shares will be transferred from one person to another person.
Because
But you need to tell all the specific conditions to the RTA and the depository participant. Without that, it would be freely transferable.
correct. So you need to give in proper inputs to them
Yeah,
for
proper
getting the output.
instructions.
So I remember that a few years back, we had taken an advocacy drive to all of our, listed clients and the promoters therein, that they should enforce a lock-in for their shares. I think it's a few years back that we had done this, and all of our clients had got this lock-in done for their shares so that accidental transfers don't happen. Plus, right, this situation of locking in shares after the quarter came in very recently under the SEBI provision that during the insider trading window lock,
Right.
there should not be, means the demat should be locked for the concerned people. So as auditors, we see a lock with zero quantity into our demat cash also, which means that we don't hold any shares, but still there's a lock that we can't trade in these securities
Hmm.
in the time frame that the listed entity communicates. So I think that that mechanism is already there, and if people are concerned about them not being able to, kind of be subject to any of these mistakes,
Hmm.
then they can always have that lock-in put into place. So okay, so now I think there are certain professionals. You have any other specific complex question or matter that you may want to address before we dive into technical subject, deep diving into the provision itself?
Yeah, see, these particular provisions, applicability we need to check as on 31st March 2023. So as on 31st March 2023 or after that, if you are falling under the definition of small companies, then this particular provision will be exempted. And if you are not, then you would be required to comply with this particular provision. Second thing, once as on 30th September 2024, this is the deadline. So we need to comply. But if we haven't complied, then there would not be possible any transfer of securities, or you cannot do any further issuance of shares.
Correct. So coming to that, one common, advocacy amongst professionals is that the notification has come.
Hmm.
The time for complying is 30th September 24.
Hmm.
But if you do any activity such as issue of shares or rights issue, and that's up to the time. So if a private company was to issue shares today,
Hmm.
certain professionals are advocating that you first need to get your shares demat because the provision is already come.
Hmm.
And still, my view is that you still have a time till 30th September. That 30th September 24 is by when you need to demat, right? So even if you issue shares today, I think you don't need to get demat first. You obviously could do it as good practice, but then it is not a precondition.
Hmm.
But there are two views going on around this.
Hmm.
So what is your view on this?
Okay. I was also of the view that once this notification has been enacted, okay, so you need to compulsory dematerialize all shares if you want to do any corporate actions, for example, further issuance of shares or anything. But after reading in between the lines as well as discussing with my seniors, okay, I came to the conclusion that now as on 30 before 30th September, if you want to do any corporate actions, you can do in physical shares also. But once the 30th September deadline is crossed, then you need to compulsory doing dematerialized form only.
Okay, so now one interesting question. For example, The company has dematerialized its securities, right? They have done all the process, and it's a private company, say 60 shareholders, and 10 shareholders have not dematerialized their securities because they couldn't be traced. Old shareholders, company has done all the requisite communications, they've sent out the notices, everything, but still they are not kind of coming into the demand. So what happens to those people? Do they still have a window after it, or it's gone forever?
So it's not gone forever. They would be having the window for doing dematerialization. Say, for example, you are doing a bonus issue. Okay. So you would be issuing bonus issue to all the shareholders in the eco proposal. Now, the person who is not having the demat shares, okay, so that particular person's bonus shares would be kept aside. So once,
Did it go to the IPF?
yeah, it would be no, after period of 7 years, it would go to IPF. It would be under locking.
It would be under lock-in.
Yeah.
But if this shareholder hasn't been traced, so for example, if dividend hasn't been paid to him for seven
So for
years,
7 years, then after that, it
then
would be
7 years you would have to
compulsorily,
transfer the
yeah,
shares
transfer
also
the
to
shares to the
IPF.
IPF account.
And then IPF would be demat.
IPF would be,
Is so that's an interesting
yeah, that
bit.
I also need to research out.
Good. I think it was a good learning experience, and it's good. Let's see how much people enjoy listening to us and participating in our brainstorming session. And thank you for joining us today. And we hope to do this more, because we regularly do this, but we don't record this.
Record this, right?
And I think let's see how much interest people show in our conversation. And yeah, good. I think it's a good start.
Yeah, same here, same here. Great.
Great, great. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's it for today. Let's kind of close it here.